long as we can see them hale and hearty, I believe that will suffice for now.
Gus just like visibly lets out a sigh. Like he's like, "Oh, good, they're okay."
So you agree to this?
Gus does.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see a reason not to.
So the king dismisses you for the time being, and he calls out, I think next I would like to hear a grievance about a chicken coop. Bring forward somebody with a chicken coop story. You guys are taken by members of the House Guard to a section of the palace which is essentially meant for guests to inhabit. Ten Sales has appointed some people as permanent residences in this particular wing. For example, this is close to where Lucius... No, Journey was not in this building. She was not in the palace proper, in one of the outlying buildings. But typically this is where, if somebody is visiting Dunfoss on business directly with the crown and are guests of the king, he has a section of the palace with apartments specifically for them. And that's where you're taken now. Linda and Kana are both here. Linda is physically here in the apartments when you arrive. And there is a squat little tower towards one side of the palace. The hallway leading out to that area crosses through a courtyard that is completely in the process of being torn down, rebuilt, and replanted. The tower itself leads up to a second floor parapet. A second floor walkway between the towers. What am I looking for?
Staircase?
Well, the staircase would be in the tower. I'm blanking on the actual word. But you can look up on the wall around the courtyard where this tower is located. And there's several other like it as well. And you can see they're being heavily patrolled. Linda is there, and she's been giving very comfortable, very lavish compared to her own house, living quarters. Kana's not there. Kana has been kind of given the run of the courtyard. She's off doing whatever it is she spends her days doing. And they were effectively just arrested. King's guards came in the dead of night. They showed her a legal document stating that she had to vacate the barge, essentially. She was there doing some work. And she and Kana went without a fight. Angrily at first. But mostly what she's concerned about is the uncertainty. She's not sure why she was brought here. And she suspected it might have something to do with the king had information that you guys weren't going to be returning to Dunfoss, that you'd gone off on your mission and had been killed or captured, or that was her concern.
Well, as you can see, we're hale and hearty.
Went to a city that is on another plane of existence. It was a good time.
Yeah, she has no idea what that means.
No, it wasn't a good time.
You're just upset because your hands weren't your hands.
Will they ever be your hands again? Can you ever be sure?
Don't ask questions like that, Burkroyd, please.
So, spending the afternoon there, and getting on into evening time, Kana returns, and she seems in very good spirits. She seems to be very enjoying living here amongst the people in the palace. She's been spending her day with various construction workers, carpenters and things. And you see where she has... she's wearing very rough clothing, and she's kind of dirty. And you can see where she has an injury on her hand today that's been bound up, where she claims to have apprenticed herself to one of the carpenters working here. And this is a place where she gouged into part of her hand with a planing tool, or maybe an awl. She's glad to see most of you back. You've never actually seen her in this state of animation before. You don't see a lot of the fear and worry and confusion as previously when you brought her back from the minions of the flying pig. You all are served dinner. Servants come in with the day's meals. And after this, you're summoned to speak with 10 Sails privately.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody looking to accomplish anything in the palace in general until that happens? Sneak into a vault, assassinate somebody?
Say that for
Nothing,
tomorrow.
nothing that egregious, but Lucius is wondering how much free reign he has of the place.
Quite a bit. And the places that you're barred from, a lot of times don't make sense. It's just, there's so much chaos going on right now. There's talk about 10 Sails wants to rebuild the walls around the palace. And there's a lot of good reasons to not do that. There's talk about he has repurposed dungeons underneath the palace that has not been used in many, many decades. A lot of staff he has brought into the palace. Families that have served in the palace for decades, since for generations even, were summarily just dismissed out of hand. Told we were not going to need your services anymore. And new people brought in who maybe can't be trusted. A lot of rumors and a lot of uncertainty going around through the rank and file of palace workers.
Lucius is going to try and schmooze as best he can to try and maybe get an ear in the palace that he could call upon at some point in the future, if the need ever arose.
At what level? Like, are you looking for somebody who's going to have access to the king himself, or are you looking for like a washerwoman that you can pay a few silvers a month and get some like choice gossip?
The latter, yeah. I'm just kind of looking for gossip at this point.
Okay, go ahead and make me an insight check.
Oh, goody. That's a 0.
Okay, yeah, you have no problem finding a washerwoman who will take your silvers
Okay.
and share some information with you. And this is where you hear some information about how the king has a lot of secret plans that most people don't know, but she knows because she heard it from someone who heard it from someone who's been down there, is repurposing the dungeons underneath the palace. Because he's going to lock up hundreds and hundreds of people. There's going to be torture chambers, and they're bringing back all kinds of antique and exciting means of execution, and all this is going to be done underground where the public can't see it. She's very confident that all this is happening.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past Sigurd 10 Sails, to be honest.
Okay. Anybody else doing anything before having a private meeting with 10 Sails in his own chambers?
No.
No.
Not particularly.
Okay.
Nah.
Do Numac, Linda, and Kana come with you to this meeting?
Do they want to?
Linda wants to get out of the palace entirely. Like, it's been a comfortable stay, but I mean, there's work that needs to be done. There's a life she needs to tend to. She still doesn't really know why she was brought here.
I think she should. Well, I mean, either way, we'll ask for her and Connor to be released. But I mean, if she wants to stay in the room, I think she should stay in the room. But if she wants to come and maybe ask the question herself, she can as well.
Okay.
We'll get all of this straightened out.
He meets you in a lavish dining area in the King's Own Chambers. This is a place where the king and his household would live in the palace. He doesn't really have a household to speak of. He's not married. He doesn't have children. He doesn't have a family living here. It's just him and a lot of servants. And in fact, the dining hall, he actually has it decorated and set up as though it is quarters on a ship. to the point that he has nautical artwork around. He's had the stone of the floor replaced with ship's floorboards. There's a curvature to the walls now. And he's taken some creative liberties. I mean, there's still a nice, large, lavish table set up. There are still doors leading off into kitchens and stores on either sides. And he has the a ship's wheel placed at the far end, mostly for decoration. Obviously, your ship's wheel would not be inside of any of the rooms on a ship. But crisscrossing the top of the dining hall back and forth are what look like his actual ship sails. And you find him in good spirits, both literally, as he looks like he's had quite a lot to drink already, and emotionally when you arrive. And he motions to the sails and says, "A reminder that though I'm now on land, I must always be sailing forward. Please, sit. There's no shortage of food or drink to be had. I would hear all about your excursion."
Well,
Well, our
go ahead.
our road took us to Blue Worm, and outside of Blue Worm,
Then back to Blue Worm. And then out of the city very quickly.
So who's going to fill him in on what transpired and what information are you leaving out of the story? 'Cause my understanding is you're telling him one thing happened that's not the complete truth. Because you want him to think that Rallick was the only means of securing this book, and you had to do it by thievery. You had to burgle him.
yeah.
And are you telling him about the excursion to Sigil with the Kodrashi fork?
I don't think we'll tell him about the fork, but we'll tell him that we did have to go to Sigil.
Okay.
Because that was why we were originally heading out there, right? Was that we thought
Yeah.
we were doing investigation that led us to dig around in Sigil a bit.
And do we tell him we found the location of the that staff? We're unable to procure it.
No.
Not for free.
Yeah, not for free.
Over the course of the conversation, as you guys are recounting everything that's happened, at some point in the conversation, he reaches into his vest and he pulls out a folded piece of parchment. And you can see that it has black wax across one side of it that has been cut open. And he just takes this small envelope out and he sets it on the table in front of him. Doesn't say anything about it or interrupt the story. And as the explanation comes to the conclusion,
Yeah.
he's listened intently. And so that would explain why I have a letter here from Kavnokar's hand explaining the circumstances under which they will deliver to me my book.
Indeed.
What are the circumstances they have listed? That was not what we were told would happen.
What were you told would happen?
They would hand it over?
It tells you that the letter explains that there is an underground, an organized thieves guild operating in Dunfoss, which doesn't surprise him. A city of this size, it would be almost, it would be absurd to believe otherwise. But has explained that the previous king did a great deal of effort to clamp down on its prestige and its tendrils seeping into especially business in the city. if I agree to a reversal of some of these processes and agree to make use of Kavnokar's hand, a criminal underground organization in pursuit of the crown's own business, I'm told that the book will be delivered to me if I appear in a public place. And then he looks to Rallick. He says, and I have you to thank for this? I understand?
Rallick's been standing at attention with his hands behind his back the whole time, waiting to be addressed.
Has everybody? Because he had invited you all to come to the table and partake of food and
Alex
drink.
is totally eating.
Lucius was
Yeah,
actually
Alex
felt
has
comfortable at
a
home.
big plate in front of him. He has all of his, like, he's got Scrappy there. He's kind of leaning against him.
No, Lucius has made himself quite at home.
Connor's like, look how many grapes I can fit in my mouth at once.
No, that's a
Yeah.
Eating 5 batteries.
So while they've been eating, Rallick has just been standing, waiting to be addressed?
Yep.
Out of discomfort or out of...
Out of propriety. He's been standing there like it's the most natural thing in the world. Because he hasn't made the introduction of the king yet. So
The king asks if he should make available his wine tester to you. If you're not eating his food, is it because you believe it's poisoned? I can assure you, it's quite healthy.
Also, it's
And
poisoned. I can take care of it.
Rallick just smiles and said, "Most assuredly not, sire. I was having not made your previous acquaintance, and I was just maintaining I was maintaining the rules of conduct.
Well, as to
Allow
rules
you
of
to address
conduct,
me at your pleasure.
the proper address would be Your Grace.
Naturally, your grace. I apologize."
Notably, has everybody else in Flumph Inc. been addressing him as such over the conversation?
I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
And having watched this Rallick, it doesn't seem to have bothered him that Flumph Inc. is talking to him very casually and very familiarly. So the king invites Rallick to a chair close to where he's sitting. He's not sitting at the head of the table. He's just sitting at the far end of the room. So the actual... there are 2 chairs at the head of the table where traditionally the king and his consort would sit, are being left vacant for the moment. He's sitting in one of the chairs to their left. And he motions for you to sit across from him at the table. So that to your left would be the 2 high seats that are vacant right now.
Right.
He wants to know, and keeping in mind that the other member of Flumph Inc. are here, as well as servants streaming in and out of the room constantly, he wants to know a great deal about this Thieves Guild. He wants to know where they operate from. He wants to know names of some of their high-ups. He's asking you a lot of questions that... being a member of the guild yourself, you've kind of always been led to believe answering these questions like maybe on pain of death it would be justifiable. Sharing a lot of insider information very casually with a man who doesn't seem to be taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm. Rallick in response just says, I apologize, Your Grace. I am merely a cog in a wheel, and in this endeavor, I was just a humble contractor hired to do a job.
This is where I think we're going to hit a snag, Rallick. Because I don't like humble people. I like bodacious, ostentatious people. And he slams his fist down on the table and says, "The day I sailed into Dunfalls to declare for the throne," he motions over to Lucius, who has, what, half a ham shank hanging out of his mouth?
No, Lucius is polite.
Connor's the one with the ham shank out of his mouth.
Right. Do you know what this man did the day I sailed to Dunfalls? Lucius,
I didn't.
Udoc, wanted to make sure he was the first Dunfalson to speak to me face to face, and he used magic to fly out over the harbor and plant his feet down on my vessel without even waiting for an invitation. That's the sort of man I need in my service, Rallick. So, tell me what we can do tonight to murder your humility once and for good.
He'll just say, "Well, Your Grace, I was merely being polite earlier. One could say, one could say, in a point of view, that instead of just merely acquiring a book, I managed to worm my way into the presence of one such as yourself that I would ordinarily not have been able to meet."
Are you a villain, Rallick?
I am no such thing, sir.
A criminal? A cutpurse?
Those are such base terms. I am many things, but I am nothing so base as that.
Rallick, I sailed
Connor-
for 30 years as a pirate.
Connor looks at the king and just nods his head in the background, like, yeah.
Rallick, have you ever been a pirate?
Not per se.
A burglar?
Though I have engaged in activities that could be considered as such.
He puts his elbows on the table and leans forward so far that you can smell the wine on his breath.
Mm-hmm.
An assassin?
He kind of bristles at that a little bit. I don't like. Again, I am disliking of such terms, but I have, in the course of my duties, been obliged to. I may or may not have been obliged to do certain such activities in the past.
He calls out.
That was necessary as part of the game.
He calls out across the table. Says, "Raise a glass if you've ever killed a man who didn't deserve it." And he snatches up his glass and he raises it high over his head.
Gus gets kind of far away looking and raises his glass above his head.
You're welcome.
Connor raises his.
Alex just sort of shakes his head.
Lucius does not.
And then he kind of very reluctantly pulls a flask out of his coat and holds it up. Takes a long swig.
Lucius is abstaining, and what about Rallick?
No, Rallick, I said he raised his glass.
Everybody but Lucius, then.
Mm-hmm.
You see, proper villains all except Lucius here, who I'm.
No.
He leans in again and says, "If I were a betting man, I would think he's lying."
At least one of us has to maintain some semblance of respectability, especially being in the king's service.
He tells Rallick, "Look, I have no illusions that I'm coming into my crown and eliminating crime and outlawing burglary and putting the criminals against the wall. What I want to know is, do the people you represent, do you have actual aptitude? Do you have function that I can make use of in my pursuits?"
He'll look at him and say, "Your Grace, there are many things that a wise ruler such as yourself could seek to accomplish that might need to be done in certain ways that one might not want to be seen yourself doing it."
Mm-hmm.
And the organization I represent is very adept at that and could become very, very useful to one such as yourself.
Alex, remind me, your father's name?
Flintraker.
Let's say I needed Ambassador Flintraker killed. Would I contact your guild to do this? No questions asked. I need a dagger in the back. I need it done tonight. You're the man I would contact.
I actually don't know how to answer that, Brick. I don't know if they engage in that or not. Out of character.
So, for the duration of King Maximilian's tenure, probably not, because they've really had to scale back operations quite a lot while the dwarves were in charge. And that was the past 12 years or so. I don't know how long you've actually been affiliated with the guild? Has it been your whole life, or has it been kind of like a recent pursuit?
It's been quite some time.
Okay. So the answer is that the answer to that question is really going to depend on how you can go back and report on the king's disposition towards having a thieves guild around. As long as there's money and profits to be made, you're sure that Nin could be persuaded to do any sort of wet work.
Okay.
A lot of this is up into the air. In other words, your answer is going to shape the things to come between the king and the guild. No pressure.
Okay.
So if he needed Ambassador Flintraker killed tonight, no questions asked. You're the man I would talk to.
If he'll just look at him and said, though that is not the that is not, perhaps, shall we say, the core of the business. If your Majesty or if your Grace were to need such a thing, it could be arranged.
Certainly not the kind of thing that I would want to ask Flumph Inc. to take care of for me. Sort of outside of the wheelhouse, so to speak.
I believe having connections. I believe that your Grace having connections outside of a normal mode of operation could become quite useful to yourself and to your position.
So I'll raise a glass here then to our fallen friend, Florian, a member of the Signers Guild here in Dunfoss.
Lucius raises his glass.
I'm going
Alex does too.
I'm going to require Flumph Inc. to foot the bill to hire a signer to be at the handover for my required book. I have no compunctions dealing with thieves, cutthroats, murderers, pirates. There are uses for this type of business, and I look forward to a long and prosperous relationship with your guild. But first I need to know that they haven't tampered with my book. This is reasonable?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is agreeable to Flumph Inc.?
Indeed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second order of business is this Choreo Fireblood debacle that has darkened my door.
Lucius casts a dispersive glance over his shoulder at Nelwyn.
Fireblood and his people burst into my palace, insisting that Flumph Inc. be arrested, and this one, he points to Gus, be executed publicly for crimes against his person and body. That's not the kind of work that your guild would do, Rallick, correct? This would have to be done.
Sorry, say that again. My work phone went off.
If he's saying that Fireblood came to the palace insisting that Flumph Inc. be arrested, and that Gus, in particular, be executed publicly. But that's not the kind of work that you're saying the guild can do for him.
Public execution, no, would not be our forte. Anything we did would be more of a private, quiet nature.
No, of course not. I would need a headsman for something like that. Gus, I would like to inform you that while I have selected a royal headsman, I have not set up an appointment for you. For I have no intention on arresting any of you or seeing any of you come to harm. And in fact, I have taken every step and liberty in severing the problematic tie that your organization has had with Choreo Fireblood in the past. To wit, I have purchased your debt. Fireblood was not happy. I gave him less than half of what the debt was worth. and I told him if he didn't like it, he could attempt to collect it himself through whatever legal means he could avail himself of under the harsh scrutiny of the crown. Privately, I informed businesses that he's frequented, places where he's spread money around, that any effort to collect this debt should be strong-armed, stonewalled, made impossible. Eventually, he had no choice but to return and accept my terms, after which I knocked off another 10%, which is to say that the value he's gotten from dealing with Flumph Inc. has been very, very unsatisfactory to him.
It is a disappointment. I felt like we were on the cusp of making a breakthrough on his investigation.
He says it's disappointing for him, perhaps, but now that you owe me 33,000 pieces of gold, I'm sure I can put your work to much more useful tasks than Fireblood could have.
Connor seems lost in thought.
Lucius doesn't look happy at the prospect, but says nothing.
He snaps his fingers, and one of the servants takes the lid off of a large serving platter near him at the table. And Alex, you notice that on the serving platter, he has a couple of your ledgers that you notice had been missing from the barge. He tells you he's taken the liberty of going through the books just to ensure that he has a expectation as a businessman to protect his new investment, and also fearing reprisal from Fireblood in the first tumultuous days after the agreement was made, because he does have very powerful friends in the city, powerful friends who would have stood against Tensail's being selected king. He also took the liberty of having your barge employees temporarily relocated as guests in the palace until your return.
Does that mean
that's
Linda
gracious of you.
Does that mean Linda what?
can go? Like she's not stuck in the palace anymore?
He's going to leave that up to you. You're going to have to be the decision point on that.
She's already expressed interest in getting back to work, and I see no reason to prohibit her from doing so. I don't know if you've worked on it, but if you work on her on a daily basis, we tend to give her a wide berth when it comes to managing this business.
Then I leave her safety entirely in your hands. It's my understanding that Fireblood has retained the services of Vandelay Incorporated to continue his investigation, although he has told me a bit about the nature of this investigation. And I suppose the question I should pose to all of you is, should I be concerned about this man at all?
I see absolutely no reason to be concerned about Corio Fireblood. His only asset seems to be
Lots of money.
massive amounts of money.
And
his ambition is to be recognized as by the crown as a scion of House Fireblood, a long defunct house.
Connor very pointedly does not answer that question.
Okay.
he's a ponce. But he does have a lot of money, and he's kind of ruthless. I mean, he has threatened us before, which I didn't take well.
I mean, I don't think Fireblood's threats have anything behind other than the backing of the legal system behind them. Like I said, his only asset seems to be money. I, at this point, sort of regret that we never tried to dig out where he actually had all of it or where it came from, because if he actually is some sort of noble, like most nobles would balk at throwing that kind of money around.
Are we gonna tell, just real quick, like, Like, does the king want to know what we found out, or does he not care? Like, I'm just trying to, like, does he want us to, like, how much information does he want us to give about Choreo?
Make an insight check. Unless you're asking him straight out what his interest is.
That's a 12.
Okay. Fireblood was known to him previously, but was not particularly on his radar as a person to be concerned about. He doesn't know anything more about Fireblood than you guys would have. Which is to say, he would have to know if Fireblood is a potential threat to the crown, and if not, he's happy to completely dismiss him.
If his question for the question he's asking is he does he appear to be a threat to the crown? I would agree with Alex and say not particularly. He hasn't shown any.
The worst Fireblood could do, if Fireblood really gets under your guff, just offer to put his house back in service, give him a functionary position that has no actual power, and as far as I'm aware, that would be the end of it. He doesn't actually have any personal power, just wealth.
Actually, if I recall correctly, he very specifically told us that having 10 cells fix the issue would not satisfy the debt.
Fireblood was more interested in finding actual evidence showing his family's unbroken lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like, having just him declare, like, himself, like, having the king declare him as the heir of House Fireblood wasn't good enough.
Yeah. He wanted, yeah, he wanted something of actual factual proof that he is a descendant of Fireblood. Of this Elda.
So, he's not a man to be particularly feared. I suppose the next question is he a man that needs to be dealt with? Is Fireblood's presence in the city going to interfere with your work for the office?
No.
Connor was very confident in that answer.
Yeah.
Not at present. If he starts making more noise, I rest assured I will inform you immediately.
He's not going to be a threat.
Gus squints at Connor and goes, it just kind of leans in to whisper, "You're not going to kill him, are you?"
No, I'm not going to kill him.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, no, I don't think we need to do anything with him at this time. I don't feel like anything he's done, especially now that he doesn't have that leverage over us, would indicate that he is dangerous.
The last actual order of business he wants to know, because Rallick is now officially a member of Flumph Inc., as per Nin's babysitting requests. He wants Rallick to be present at the holdover of this book. Flumph Inc.'s job is going to be to procure the services of the Signers Guild to ensure that there's no magical placements on the book, and Rallick is to be there for the holdover. The implication here is if this goes badly, I'm going to drag you off to a dungeon.
Rallick just shakes his wrist nonchalantly with the bracelet on and says, "That's just part of the game."
The game you play sucks. Have you tried checkers?
It's the only. He just looks at Gus pityingly and says, "It's the only game."
No,
Lucius swipes his hand over the table and fans out a deck of cards.
Gus pulls out some dice in his hands. Says, "I think you're wrong," demonstrably.
Those are also part of the larger game.
The king looks
never
over
told
at
us.
Connor, waiting for him to pull out like a chess set. or a Game Boy or something.
Alexander has the Game Boy. Let's be real.
You never
Pea
told
green.
us why you wanted the book.
I mean,
it's a fascinating historical artifact.
Mm-hmm.
He looks at Lucius and says, "Do you think I'm a man who's interested in history?
you're
A sentimental man?"
No, I think you're interested. I honestly, if I may be so frank, I think you're interested in an ancient in a words are hard right now. I'm sorry. I think you're interested in an angle to seek out the treasures of a famous ship.
Gus has a lights up and says, "Wait a minute." He goes, and he'll ask Tensel's, "Are you looking for something in the castle?"
Ted Sales tells you that he has no shortage of treasure. I mean, he was a pirate for so long. He has a vast collection of wealth and magical goods. And now that he's taken the throne of Dunfoss, I mean, he has the prestige and power that goes along with all of that. He tells you that this book represents something so valuable, and he points at Rallick, that if his boss knew about it, his real boss, not you lot who we're pretending he's working with, if his boss knew the value it represented, he would guard it with blood and sell it at no price.
Rallick will nod at that and said it didn't take much to see that there was clearly some advantage to be gained by the information in the book if one had the wisdom to understand it.
Rallick, I mentioned earlier that I've taken into service a headsman. Would you like to meet him?
He'll just shrug.
Please do not kill the new guy, sir.
You're going to have to make a very difficult decision, I think. Whether you are a guildsman or a kingsman. You cannot tell the people in your guilds the value that this book represents without making an enemy of me. And you cannot facilitate handing over of something of such tremendous value to me without making an enemy of them. It's a fun game, isn't it?
It's the only game. He just shrugs. It's the only game.
The only game.
I feel like
Lucius scoops his cards back up.
He asks...
Such is the nature always of it.
He asks, kind of addressing Lucius and Alex both at the same time, says, "If I may place a bet with you, Lucius, I will bet
Lucius leans forward.
10 pieces of gold that if you were to use a detect magic spell, if you were to detect magic in this very room," and he points at Rallick, says, "you would find his bracelets teeming of it."
Certainly take that bet, Your Grace. Lucius pulls out a hand. Actually, he doesn't have any gold coins to cover. Pulls out a platinum piece, places it on the table.
I am not carrying any coinage at present. I hope you will agree that I can be trusted.
And then, yeah.
So you're betting the bracelets aren't magic, yes?
Yeah.
He's betting that they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rallick's just staying quiet.
And you're able
Watching
to
the two of them.
you're able to detect magic, right? Like we don't actually have this to cast the spell, but you have to have access to casting the spell in order
Yeah,
to be able to
I'm
use
pretty
it.
sure it's on the Warlock list.
Okay. Go ahead and
Let me double check.
make an Arcana check.
Actually, detect magic is not on the Warlock spell list, but I am trained in Arcana.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to bog down this detail too much. Oh, you know why? Because they have it as an invocation. That's why.
That's right. Yeah, that's an 11.
Alex, you can also make this roll independently.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and throw a wiggle die on top of that with Dark One's Own luck.
The Dark One's Own cheating?
Yep. Make that a 13.
And there is evocation magic on placed on both of these bracelets.
Lucius casts Mage Hand, picks up the coin, levitates it over toward Captain Tensails.
He takes it and he shuffles it away in one of his pockets.
So, are you a living bomb? Are you going to explode? Kill the lot of us in this one room?
Cuz
Rallick
scoots
will-
his chair away.
Rallick will look at the king. Rallick will look at the king, or look at Tensails, and he'll just kind of lift his hands up and said, "I believe you had the right of it more than." He'll just. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. He'll say, "You are a quite a wise and shrewd man and ruler. I have to say, you have the right of it more than you realize. The situation I find myself in is," and he'll do it with the left hand, "if I displease one group, I potentially lose my hand. If I displease yourself, I potentially lose my head. What decision would you make in such a situation?"
He says, "I'll tell you this. I wouldn't rely on my wisdom or true ability as a leader, but rather my acumen as a scoundrel to come to such a decision."
And that with that one, he with that Rallick just puts both his hands up and just and nods at it, like as in that was the answer he expected.
He says, "If you are a true Kingsman, as all members of Flumph Inc. are sitting here tonight, these men have done great deeds in my service. They were of great help in lifting me to my throne. I have shared with them secrets, and they have, well, I owe them my life. Only once, I think. If you were to declare yourself as a Kingsman tonight, I'm sure anything that I need to do in service of fostering my end of that friendship, ensuring that you realize that the king is your friend, a friend to you, a friend to Flumph Inc., a friend to the other men at this table. Any resources that need to be spent in alleviating the magical curse of these bracelets, whatever they're designed to do, we'll say we'll just put it on your tab."
Rallick will get up, formally bow, and say, "I am at your service."
That remains to be seen. He says, "Set up the meeting tomorrow. Find a man in the Signers Guild to meet with us. In a public place of your choosing. I was told it had to be a place where any man in Dunfoss could watch with his own eyes. Is there anything else for King Tensails?
No. I'm good.
Then he expresses great relief that you've managed to make it back safely. And how much of your adventure into Sigil did you talk to him about?
I would have told him anything except for the specifics of the robbery. Like, I'd have kind of gone around like a bit of what we did, but not actually cover why we were in there. And I think that's pretty much it. I pretty much covered all the ridiculous stuff, like the portal to the plane of water and all that stuff. Like, I focused on that.
He especially likes the part of the story about the tentacle monster. That's something he can really relate to.
Yep.
So, Rallick, your goal for tomorrow, you want to hire a man of the Signers Guild and set up a meeting between the king and Nin in some public place. So, I don't actually want to get bogged down in this scene too much. I just kind of want to know what the outcome of it is. Do you hire a legitimate man of the Signers Guild?
In this case, yeah, we just hire a legitimate one.
And where in town do you set this meeting for?
Where it would be an open public. I was looking at this temple district. Would that be...
Everywhere in town has large public places. Keep in mind that some of the outlying districts, so Quarry Town, Wharf Town, the Shallows, Broken Wall, and Gnome Town, are all outside of the actual walls of the city. The Temple District is one of the more posh districts in town, but there's no shortage of people at any time. And it's open to the public, anybody with an interest.
Let's just do it there at an open square in the Temple District, then.
Okay. Go ahead and everybody take the benefits of a long rest if you need to. So I need Alex to roll me a d20.
Magic 6.
Okay. Do you remember how much, McDohl, we were saying that a signer effectively charges for something like this?
No. That was a character ago.
I burned that character sheet. I printed it out specifically so I could burn it. Let's see.
I mean, I think you were just making wages as a skilled professional, right?
Yeah, it's actually not a lot. It was like
You
I wanna say
owe
like 5 gold.
3 guilds or equivalent in signer's trade, and I think you worked an entire day.
Yeah,
Uh,
that I remember.
But considering this is a deal with the actual king, I guess I'll leave that up to Rallick.
Signers Guild proficiency with inside perception. Owe 3 gold pieces a month or a trade/tax.
I'll put a floor on 1 gold piece to hire a signer. So, like, this is the price you'd get to overlook, like, a prestigious contract or something and make sure there's no magical compulsion. I'll put the floor at 1 gold, and I'm going to ask Rallick, how much do you invest in ensuring this deal works to the king's satisfaction? I mean, you can hire multiple signers, you can have people there to use, like, detect magic kind of stuff, make a big show of it, or do you just do the bare minimum?
He said he wanted 1 sign. He'd do enough if the minimum is like, so 1 gold is enough for just the single signer.
Mm-hmm.
He'll do it with let's say 5. Let's do it with just enough to make it appear official to what he thinks
Okay. So
might be the king's specifications.
I mean, for 5 gold, you can have, like, that's enough money for, like, one of the higher-ups in the Signers Guild. Somebody who usually doesn't go down into the rank and file. Like, somebody with name and actual clout to oversee the transaction.
Yeah, let's do that.
Somebody that Florian wasn't.
Right. Like, you can hire Florian's boss for that kind
Yeah,
of...
that's what I was thinking. We should hire. That was my suggestion. Was we should hire Florian's boss.
Florian had a boss?
Well, he only worked 1 day out of the month. So, the signers do have a central organization in town, but there's also a lot of, like, private and independent little, like, satellite businesses. Like, you can get licensed as a signer, member of the Signers Guilds, without having to be part of the core organization. So a lot of times for, like, a transaction like this, with 5 gold, you might actually hire a signer from 2 separate independent concerns to come in and offer differing opinions on what's actually happening, and both of them give the thumbs up and sign off on it, just to be absolutely certain. So yeah, with 5 gold, I would say that you're making at least a little bit of a show of it. And this is happening in the Temple District. So here's what you learn. Nin shows up in the guise of a librarian, an elderly gentleman, wisps of hair everywhere on his head except the top, with green and red robes that he wears heavily all around him, and smells of dust and paper. Hard of hearing. The king the signers sign off on the detail. The transaction goes off without a hitch. The conversation is short. There's some interest from a crowd around here. The king seems a little perturbed that this is Rallick's contact, and he gives you a look. Doesn't say anything overt, but gives you a look like, this is the guy? Really? This is what we're dealing with?
Connor gives a look back of, oh, come on.
But he gets the book. There are no magics placed upon it. As far as that it's been that's been used, that's been messed with, that it's going to be used for deception, that it's going to burst into flames. He does give a little history lesson to the crowd that's kind of the temple goers, and this is actually the first day of the Magic game, so there's some of that happening as well. But he gives a little bit about the history of the ship that this log came from, and how he's going to be adding it to the palace vaults that is kind of just placing a brick into the wall of Dunfosset history. He and the old man don't have much of a conversation. The old man seems hard of hearing, has difficulty following what all's being said. But at the end of the meeting, the king and his men had their way, and Rallick, your contacts at the guild, had theirs. Everybody seems satisfied with how everything went down. Covertly, one of the king's men lets you guys know that at your leisure, he's willing to discuss the book with you.
Okay.
For Connor,
Lucius wants to be there for that.
Mm-hmm.
Connor wants to make that a priority.
Like, Connor just wants to go back with him right now.
Yeah. He wants to know why he wants this book.
Okay.
I don't know how the rest of the Flumph thing feels, but Connor has one of his instinct punches things. And he doesn't like it.
You mean the ones that make you want to do violence against our clients?
That's no. See, we've talked about this. One is about Fae and how evil they are, and that's completely different than to what he wants, what he possibly could want, what this book would be for.
Okay.
I mean, he's looking for something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that much is obvious.
but it's just a crew manifest, right?
Yes.
It's also. I thought it was also a log of.
Is it
stuff
also-
taken in.
Well, it was a log as well. At least it was when Rallick read it.
I
So
mean,
it's a crew manifest and a log.
but it was a log on a pirate ship, so a lot of information about like what cargo was brought on and taken off, like none of that is on the up and up for sure. But yeah, predominantly it's a crew manifest. Who served aboard this ship, and a good 100+ pages, as this ship was in service for such a long time.
Are we still in front of the bosses? Are we still in front of the king and what's his name? Or is it just Flumph now?
They went their separate ways, and they told you
Yeah.
that the king is willing to discuss the book with you at a time of your leisure.
Okay.
Okay. Today's the first day of the games, right?
It sure is, and
Sure is.
before we get into all that nonsense, how about we take a 15-minute break?
Sure.
Well, before we take our break,
Yeah.
Connor wants to share his thoughts.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
Connor is suddenly very concerned about how quickly the king bought out Corio Fireblood and his debt to make sure that we stop investigating his trail and whether or not he's actually a house and the lineage of Eldov and all of that.
Who would be
That's
in this
all time.
manifest?
That hadn't escaped my notice. Yes, like if he wanted our strict service, he would have bought it out. He would have bought out Corio sooner.
Yeah.
Something has changed.
there's something. I have a suspicion those paths end up in the same place.
Well,
Anyway, that's
according to the stories, Eldov did serve aboard Adric's Honor for a time.
yeah. Anyway, we can go take our break now.
All right,
We
go
can
ahead.
get coffee and bagel.
Get coffee, get your bagel. I actually have English muffins.
I am out of coffee, but I am actually gonna get a bit.
I tried to make ramen for lunch, but this never happened. I've been eating ramen since 6th grade, all my life. 4 times a week sometimes. I opened my ramen packet, the little flavor package, empty. Nothing in it.
Wow.
Just nothing at all. I was so mad. That's how my day's going.